Legislators are in a mad scramble to pass or block the long list of bills still waiting to be resolved before the session ends next week. And as the clock winds down, a fight over processing rape kits that have been sitting unattended has turned nasty. Plus, just what is going on with the religious liberty measures that have caused such upheaval again this year. We'll talk about all that and more. Lawmakers starts right now. Welcome to Lawmakers. I'm Bill Nigut. Time flies when you're covering the state legislature. It's already day 37 of the 2016 session. We've got a lot to get to tonight, but first let's check in with Shelby Lynn with the latest under the Gold Dome. Shelby?
That's right, Bill. Time is flying. We begin the Capitol Report tonight with the latest on an effort to expand MARTA in Atlanta. The plan is alive again in the legislature after action by a House committee late today. The latest plan for expanding MARTA would allow Atlantans in Fulton County to vote on a half-cent sales tax increase for funding new MARTA projects in the city. The House Regulated Industries Committee gutted Senate Bill 369, which was a fireworks bill. This new measure uses language from last year's transportation bill to set up special districts in Atlanta and Fulton County to vote on the improvements. Representative Jan Jones has been working on the compromise bill for the last week.
And this, although it very much addresses the needs or desires of Atlanta to move forward with MARTA, it also addresses the needs and desires of my area and the other areas of Fulton County.
But I can't think of anything more important than having a MARTA bill to come out of this House and Senate this year and get to the governor.
The bill passed in the committee on a vote of 15-1. It now goes to the House floor for debate. Meanwhile, the campus carry bill could be in trouble now that Governor Nathan Deal says he won't sign it in its current form. Deal says he's concerned about the safety of high school students who take college classes and children in campus daycare centers. He also believes university officials should have a say in which campus building guns would be allowed. We're waiting to see if the Campus Carry Act will be attached to two other gun bills that are still in committees. After today, though, campus carry supporters only have 3 days to get the measure revised. Also today, Senator Vincent Fort's resolution to restrict the use of companies like Park Atlanta has died in the House. Fort says members of the House committee caved in to outside pressure.
Because I'm going to fight Park Atlanta and the predators until hell freezes over. And then I'm going to fight them on the ice. Thank you.
We've been following a series of tax measures moving through the House and Senate this session. Out of the 11 bills, we've been paying particular attention to 3 of them. One would prohibit a state property tax. The other 2 would reduce the personal income tax.
I think it's the best time in election year to lower people's income taxes. We haven't changed our income tax rate in Georgia, and I think it's 79 years.
Senate Resolution 756, which would need a 2/3 vote of the General Assembly to pass, would amend the Georgia Constitution to allow for a personal income tax reduction. The resolution is needed if the companion income tax reduction HB 238 passes. Republican Senator Judson Hill admits his tax reform bills are complicated.
Lowers your personal income tax in Georgia from 6% to 5.4% and flattens it. Raises your personal exemptions and dependent exemptions by $2,000 per person. Family of 4 gets an extra $8,000 personal exemption, for example. We flattened some of the deductions. We allow all charitable, all medical expense deductions, limit some of the others, and overall we're spending less.
But the Georgia Budget and Policy Institute is opposed to Hill's bills. GBPI senior policy analyst Wesley Tharp says the Senate resolutions are the most worrisome, especially Hill's SR 756.
756 is the most pressing one. It would lock a formula into Georgia's Constitution that would gradually phase down Georgia's top income tax rate. That could potentially cost hundreds of millions of dollars a year in lost revenue and jeopardize the state's long-term finances, for example, our Strategic Reserve Fund or our stellar AAA bond rating.
Hill's colleague, Republican Senator Bill Heath, sponsored SR 604, a constitutional amendment that would prohibit the state from collecting ad valorem or property taxes. He says the state hasn't collected the tax since 2010 anyway, and that the amount then, when it was collected, was a tiny fraction of the state budget.
Today the rate is 0, so it doesn't negatively impact the state. It's about whether or not you believe that the state should tax one's home.
Tharp says SR 604 is a concern because it essentially ties the state's hands in case of an emergency down the road when officials may need to raise money quickly in an unforeseen situation like a natural disaster. He also points out that under Hill's income tax bill, for example, those who make the most would see the greatest benefit. He says people making under $100,000 a year need a tax break the most.
If the legislature wanted to employ a targeted tax cut for those people, they might not focus as much on ramping down that top income tax rate. That's really a way to help the most affluent families and those, as I said, who are already doing really very well.
So here's where these three tax measures stand. The resolution to prohibit the state from collecting property taxes was on the agenda for the House Ways and Means Committee hearing today. The other two measures are still in committee. That's it from the Capitol bill. Back to you in the studio.
Thanks, Shelby. So let's get to our studio conversation. Joining me tonight, Jim Galloway, the political writer for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution and the editor of the Political Insider blog on the HAC website. Great to have you here, Jim. Representative Scott Holcomb of DeKalb County and Senator Josh McCoon from Columbus. Thank you all for being here. Here we are with the session really winding down, Representative Holcomb, and a measure that I think many of us figured would just breeze through the whole legislature as it did through the House is suddenly finding itself stuck in the Senate. It's the bill that you put forward to get rape kits that have sat at hospitals unattended, in some cases for years, processed. What's going on?
Well, unfortunately, the bill is stalled in the Senate, and I've had a number of conversations with the chair of the Health and Human Services Committee, which is the committee where the bill has been assigned, and she decided not to give the
Senator Renee Unterman.
Correct.
Before we go to that part of it, though, remind everybody what this measure would do and why it's vital to you.
It's vital to our state. I think that's the key portion, and it's vital to victims of rape. This issue has been a national issue, and it's also an issue here in Georgia. I actually started working on it last year and dropped an initial bill. After that time, the issues related to a hospital in Atlanta were uncovered, where 1,500 kits were found.
Yeah, Grady Hospital.
Exactly. And we know that there are other kits sitting on shelves now, not moving forward. And what this bill does, very simply, is it cures any backlog that may exist across the state. And that's important because for us to get federal dollars that are available for grants, we have to prove that we have our hands wrapped around the problem completely. Secondly, it sets forth a system to ensure we never have a backlog again, whereby the kits will move from care providers to law enforcement, and then from law enforcement to the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. That will be the standard. There will be no confusion, and everybody will know what their roles and responsibilities are.
Now, does Renee Unterman, Republican out of Beaufort, I believe, said that she's not sold on this bill because the problem, she says, is only a Fulton County and DeKalb County problem. Is that so?
I don't agree with that characterization, and many of the people who I've listened to throughout this process don't agree with it. District Attorney Paul Howard has coordinated with other district attorneys, and they believe that it's broader. Victims' rights advocates also believe that it's broader. And my point also is this: why not do the work and find out for certain? This is not the type of issue where either a hospital or law enforcement wants to raise their hand and say that they have a problem. But if we put into statute a requirement that they check, and then if they find them to move forward, we know the answer. Right now, we do not unequivocally know the answer of whether or not kits are languishing.
So let me ask a question that may be naive, but you'll clarify it if I am being naive. Do we imagine that as these rape kits are processed, that, I mean, without them being processed, I assume it means that the notion of prosecuting cases like this becomes much more difficult, more problematic. Do we imagine that processing these kits will, in fact, lead to more criminal action against possible rape? I'm not quite sure what the downstream consequences of this might be.
It should. And This bill, we were very sensitive to listening to victims' rights advocates. So this bill only applies to those kits where the victim wants their case to move forward to law enforcement.
Okay.
Those that don't are still protected and have the right to say, we want to wait. And there could be compelling reasons for that. For example, they could be scared about their safety. So this bill only applies to those that want their kits to move forward for law enforcement. What we have learned through examples around the country is that the DNA evidence has been helpful to find repeat sexual offenders and rapists.
Is there a fiscal aspect to this that's not being considered that might be at work here?
None that's come up in any of the conversations that I've had or that came up in the committee. And here's the other thing that I'll say. Some have accused me of being political on this issue, which I of course reject. But if that's true, then have a hearing and listen to the experts on this and see what they say. In the House, we did that, and every person who is involved in this process supported the bill and supported the bill publicly because they know that there is a need for it.
Yeah, Senator, I'd love to get your take on this because this bill did, in fact, as Representative Holcomb refers to, pass the House unanimously. There seems to be a good deal of support for it on your side of the aisle, the Senate as well, yes?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's good public policy. If we pass this bill and close one rape case, I mean, I don't know that people are giving the full consideration to someone that's been victimized. This evidence is sitting on a shelf somewhere. Meanwhile, their case is not being prosecuted. They know their victimizer is somewhere out there. And I don't know why we would not want to move forward quickly on this and start processing those kits, and equally importantly, making sure that this sort of thing doesn't happen again.
Well, I know that Representative Holcomb, Jim, is certainly, along with his colleagues who support this, out there trying to encourage citizens to contact Senator Unterman on this. I'm wondering if there are conversations over in the Senate with members of your own party who might be talking to her about her position on this.
Well, without getting into any kind of private conversations, I mean, obviously, a number of us are concerned about this issue. We want to see it move forward, and we are doing what we can to try to see that the bill gets the consideration that I believe it deserves.
Jim, it's one of those things, it's very hard to figure out exactly what the stop point is.
Right, a bill that passes unanimously in one chamber and is blocked by the only female Republican in the Senate.
Right. Really. All right. So we're going to watch this unfold, and you have just a very little time to try to get a hearing on or to get a committee a vote on this in the Senate side to get it out to the floor, right?
That's right. And we are looking at other alternatives. And what I've said is, look, this is just good public policy. So if it needs to pass by having somebody else's name attached to it, by being with a different bill, do it. The right thing to do is to pass this bill. And one other substantive point that I'll add on to what Senator McCoon said is that the spoliation issue is real. So we want to make sure that evidence that is used in criminal prosecutions is good evidence and that is not going to be subject to attack by defense attorneys, so we can put away the people who are committing these crimes. And so by having a state system that mandates and makes absolutely clear what those rules are, I really don't understand how people can oppose it.
All right, well, while there are only a few days left in the session, you still have built in enough pad time for committees to meet and work on this. It'll be interesting to see what happens as this moves forward. Could we turn, Senator McCoon, you have become Senator Religious Freedom over the last couple of sessions, Mr. Religious Freedom down there. Where do we stand? I mean, we have now heard the governor add his voice to all of this, saying he wants a reasonable compromise or none at all. He said he'd be perfectly fine if nothing passes out. The House seems to be locked into their position, and yet Jim Galloway tells us that there have been negotiations going on to try to work out some compromise. Can you help us understand where all this stands right now?
Well, obviously, I mean, the posture of House Bill 757 is it's awaiting action in the House. Not sure what's going to happen there. There are obviously other choices that could be made beyond the First Amendment Defense Act. Representative Setzler has a federal RFRA bill. Representative Teasley has a federal RFRA bill. To kind of echo what Representative Holcomb said earlier, certainly doesn't matter whose name is on the bill. We have a variety of options that we can move forward. But right now, we seem to be at sort of an impasse. I haven't seen any indication that we're moving forward on any of these pieces of legislation.
Jim, could you help unravel for us where we stand, what's going on here, and
all right,
in terms of the measures?
Yeah, we've had a House bill move to the Senate. The Senate performed its magic.
That was the Pastor Protection Act.
And it sent it to the House. So now we are in a situation where the House has to act. It can do one of several things. It can insist on its own way, send it back to the Senate, which will likely insist, I would think. And then we have a conference committee tying up the last week.
But of course, the most important element of this, in terms of what happened when the bill went back to the House, is that the Senate attached Greg Kirk's First Amendment Defense Act, which made it a little more toxic for a lot of the members of the House that voted for the initial
you have a lot more, and that's when the governor spoke up when that happened. So you could have the House take Sam Teasley's RFRA bill, or maybe a little bit of Rich Golick's anti-discrimination bill, cook it in a pot, send it back to the Senate, and say agree or disagree, and we're out of time.
What happens if what comes back is a pastor? Do you need some legislation passed this session? Do you believe that, aside from everything else, your members need to go back to their districts and say, we passed some religious liberty bill on your behalf?
Republican state senators, if we're talking about the pure politics of it, are in a fine position. I mean, we have taken a position as a state senate that we are for the federal Religious Freedom Restoration Act language. We are for the federal First Amendment Defense Act language that's been co-sponsored by every Republican member of Congress from Georgia. So I don't think there's any political risk there. I think the people of Georgia deserve these modest protections for people of faith. And I would certainly hope that we would act this year. But I won't speak for any other member but myself, I certainly don't need to pass a bill so that I can go home and say that we did something unless it is something that is substantive.
And that may increase the walkaway factor here, because the same situation exists on the House side.
Yeah. You all voted for pastor protection on the House side, without regard to Democratic or Republican partisanship, right?
Yes, I didn't see any problem with the bill.
And what's your particular position, your individual position on any other version of this bill, including First Amendment Defense Act?
Well, we'll have to read whatever the final language is very carefully, but I would have concerns about anything that would allow discrimination, either real or perceived. And I know Senator McCoon has worked very hard on this bill. We actually share the same faith, and I have a lot of respect for him as a person and how hard he has worked on this. And I think one thing that's important is to be civil in our dialogue about this and see if there are ways to come to common ground. If not, to respectfully disagree, but have the issue be about the merits of the legislation itself.
I know that we come back to this time and time again, and I think that your suggestion that we do this in a civil way makes sense, it's reasonable, but we come back to the same thing time and again, Senator. At least the First Amendment Defense Act. There were questions about your initial bill, which you now acknowledge is probably not going to go anywhere. But there are people who believe quite sincerely that they don't want to play nice about the First Amendment Defense Act because they believe it opens the door for discrimination against gays and lesbians. And they believe they have the right to be upset about that possibility.
And I think that just results from a fundamental misunderstanding of what the bill does. When the Supreme Court engages in legislative acts, which it did in the decision redefining marriage, there are unintended consequences down the road. When we have, albeit left-leaning, legal scholars saying, now we have a basis to tax churches, synagogues, and mosques that teach traditional marriage. Now we have a basis to revoke the accreditation of religious affiliated schools that teach traditional marriage. Now we have a basis to shut down faith-based adoption agencies that place at-risk children with traditional families. All of those consequences, I asked those questions of minority party members in the debate we had, and the answers were frankly pretty lacking as far as, don't you want to do something to address these issues? That is what this legislation is squarely aimed at. And I think any fair reading of the bill shows you this isn't about, turning people away from a business. What it's about is making sure that there is space for people of faith, for people of every faith, to have their free exercise.
Let me just toss something in here. You're a good Catholic, correct? And I think,
I like to think so.
did you just? Yeah, I think you just confessed to being one. But the one absence that I've seen in this debate over the last 2 years now is the Archdiocese of Atlanta is missing from this debate. Yeah. And what do you make what do you make of that? That's if the concern is so great on that point on protecting religious institutions, why have they not stepped out here?
Well, I mean, I can't speak for Archbishop Gregory. I can say that there are many Catholic leaders around the country who have taken a strong stand on protecting religious freedom, and I think that, frankly, across the board, you have certainly the Baptist Convention here in Georgia has taken a strong position on this issue, and I think that people of lots of different faiths share the same concern, which is we ought to have free exercise. And just like with every other individual civil liberty, we may disagree, but there ought to be space for people to have that disagreement.
All right. Well, again, this is a bill, whatever bill, that's going to go down to the wire. We'll be on day 40, I think, talking about how this is going to be resolved, and we'll see how it plays out. We really have to get to a break. But as we go into the break, how well do you know your lawmaker? Tommy Williams is a Republican representing Senate District 19. He was sworn into the General Assembly in 1999. Williams attended UGA, where he was an art major with an emphasis on ceramics. He lived in the Middle East for several years and also spent 2 summers teaching English in China. In recent years, Williams started growing olives for olive oil. His oil won a gold award at the International Oil Competition. Williams also owns a restaurant called Elements in Lyons. Recently, he announced he's retiring from his Senate post at the end of the year. We'll miss Tommy Williams at the Gold Dome, but we don't have any concerns that he'll get bored. More Lawmakers in a moment.
I'm going to teach you how to become a savvy medical consumer.
Leslie Michelson is the expert's expert when it comes to getting the best possible medical care from our complicated healthcare system. Using compelling, real-life stories of patients and physicians, Leslie Michelson reveals life-saving strategies. Get the medical care you deserve in The Patient's Playbook.
Tonight at 8 on GPB.
On this date, March 15th, in 1960, 200 students staged sit-ins at lunch counters around downtown Atlanta. 6 students decided to move their protest to the cafeteria at the Georgia State Capitol. When asked to leave, they refused, and they were arrested. Welcome back to our show. I'm here with the AJC's Jim Galloway, Representative Scott Holcomb, and Senator Josh McCoon. Jim Galloway, yesterday, Governor Deal sort of dropped a bombshell on everybody. Campus Carry, the controversial bill to begin with, had passed the House, and then last Friday, after a long and heated debate, it passed the Senate, and it was on its way to his desk, and he had said, yep, I'm going to sign this.
Yeah, so we thought we were done with.
It was done on Political Rewind on Friday. We said done deal. It's
done
over.
Deal. We had taken it off the table, and so about 4 o'clock on Monday, he puts out a press release that says, I've signed every pro-gun bill that's reached my desk as governor, but I've got some real questions about this bill. Specifically, the portions that would allow daycare centers at university campuses to apply to the concealed carry areas. And he raised, for the first time, I believe, the question of high school students that matriculate on university campuses, and that they would be in this mix as well. Now, he didn't propose any fixes, but he says he would like to see the governor address these issues.
The legislature.
The legislature to address these issues in the last 3 days, or he might think about vetoing this bill.
So, Senator McCoon, I've been wondering why it seemed the Board of Regents wasn't as loud and as active, at least publicly, this year as they were last year in trying to stop this. And I can't help but wonder, do we think that this was going on behind the scenes and that for whatever reason, this is a political maneuver that the governor had in mind all along? None of us really knows.
No, I mean, I think most of us took the governor at his word when he sort of reversed the position he had in 2014 and said he was okay with this legislation. I mean, we certainly did not hear about any misgivings as we went through the committee process and took the bill to the floor. And obviously, he has every right to change his mind, but I mean, I think that ball's in his court now.
Representative Hoke, I want to read from the press release one other thing that Jim didn't mention. Quote, Deal also believes the governing boards of universities and technical colleges should have the discretion to set reasonable rules regarding disciplinary hearings and faculty and administrative offices. I mean, that seems like it's really changing course and suddenly offering, or he would like to see, university administrators have some power that they previously were apparently not going to have under this legislation.
Well, a number of states, they leave it up to the schools to make these choices and these determinations. And I have to give credit to the Senate because they actually had hearings on this. In the House, the bill was called up without any notice, and there was no opportunity for the public to comment. These are difficult issues, and I think it's very important to get as much feedback as we can by those who are directly impacted, and it seems that the governor has some concerns about those who are directly impacted and is expressing some caution about the bill moving forward.
Do we have enough time
to
make these corrections?
I mean, again, I can't speak for anyone else. I feel like, we had a 3.5-hour hearing. We heard from 40 witnesses. We entertained 5 different amendments. And then we had a very elongated floor debate. I feel
on a Friday afternoon,
yeah,
we should have.
I kind of feel like the Senate has done its job, and if the governor wants to veto the bill, that's certainly within his discretion to do so.
Is that a loss? Do you believe for legislators who are so eager to pass this bill?
I think for conservatives who entered this session in 2015. Hoping over the 2-year biennium that we would have robust religious freedom legislation, campus carry. There's a lot of disappointment that might be right around the bend if we don't get these things passed.
So we should point out that, especially the daycare aspect of this, Senator Elena Parent was on this show just last week, and that was precisely the issue that she said she was most.
She pretty much walked point among Senate Democrats on the issue. I think she spent a good bit of time at the well on this, and those were specifically the issues that she brought up. She said she had two kids who would be going to college pretty soon, and campus carry was not for them.
Interesting. We got about 2 minutes left, a little less than that. What else do you think we should be looking for in these last few days, Senator? What's on the horizon for you that you're particularly concerned about that we haven't discussed yet?
I mean, I continue to be interested to see how we have the debate on the Super Bowl tax, the sales tax. And that's something that I'm very interested in. I certainly don't want to see us dish out what I believe is corporate welfare to the NFL. So that's something I'm very interested in.
Yeah, you don't want to see that go through at all.
No, not at all.
And what about you? Do you have something, Scott, that we should be aware of, thinking about? Something big on the horizon in the next few days from your point of view?
Not that I can think of. Most of the issues that I was very passionate about have gotten stalled. And
says the Democrat in the legislature. I'm sorry, it's really not funny to kid about a member's bills, but we do understand the politics of that, don't we?
Yes.
Jim Galloway, last words from you. What other big things are coming up down the road here in the last few days?
Well, I got to say, Ohio. Florida.
Yeah.
That's what everybody's in the Capitol is really looking at.
Yeah.
Because the shape of the shape that the presidential election is going to take tonight.
Tonight is huge. Huge.
And every Republican in the state capitol is watching. Every Democrat will be watching.
All right, fine. Thank you all so much. It was really a pleasure to have you here for Lawmakers tonight. That's it for us. The end of day 37 of the 2016 session. We've got 3 more days to go. We'll be here to keep you up to date on the measures that you care about. And as Jim Galloway points out, tonight's the big night. Florida, Ohio, Illinois. It's going to be huge. And tomorrow on Political Rewind at 2 p.m., we will be here with our panel of insiders to tell you how it all came out and what it means as the campaign moves forward. I'm Bill Nygut. Thanks for joining us tonight. See you tomorrow.